Welcome all to another session of Management Principles and Applications. This current session is a continuation of Theories of Management, and our topic today is Neoclassical Approach of Management. Now, under classical approach, as we've seen, the attention was focused on jobs and machines. And after some times, workers resisted this approach as it did not provide the social and psychological satisfaction. Therefore, attention shifted towards the human side of management. And that's when this neoclassical approach came into being. So neoclassical approach actually began with the Hawthorne studies in 1920s, and it grew out of limitations of the classical theory. Elton Mayo is considered to be the founder of the neoclassical theory. And why? Because he actually performed Hawthorne experiments at the Western Electric Company, USA, during 1937 and 32. There are basically three elements of neoclassical approach, and these are Hawthorne experiments by Elton Mayo, human relations movement, and organizational behavior or behavioral management. We come to Hawthorne experiments. As I have told you, the Hawthorne experiments were the studies basically. It was a series of experiments conducted at Western Electrical Company, and it provided new insights into individual and group behavior. The research, originally sponsored by General Electric, that is GE as we know it today, was conducted by Elton Mayo and his associates. The studies focused on behavior in the workplace because behavior was something which was ignored in the classical approach. For example, in one experiment involving this group of workers, researchers monitored how productivity changes as a result of change in working condition. Let's say light, if improper lighting is there, whether the productivity decreases or not. So the Hawthorne studies and the subsequent experiments led scientists to the conclusion that human element is very important in the workplace and you cannot ignore this human element. Now, what were these Hawthorne experiments all about? They can be classified into four stages. The first is the illumination experiments. So the initial experiments carried out over a period of 3 years, and they sought to determine the effects of different levels of illumination or workers' productivity. I was just telling you about the light. So two groups were selected from among the employees. One group was placed in the room where lighting remained constant. The other group was placed in another room where lighting varied periodically. And what happened? Surprisingly, the output of both the groups increased steadily. It was concluded that lighting was a minor factor and there were other more important factors influencing the output. The results of the experiments were actually ambiguous. When the test group's lighting conditions were improved, productivity tended to increase just as expected. Although the increase was erratic, so there was no, a correlation. But there was a tendency for productivity to continue to increase when the lighting conditions were made worse. Besides, lighting was influencing the workers' performance as the work group was not able to maintain relationship between illumination and productivity. So what they found out that illumination was actually not showing any relationship with the productivity. Then the second one was the relay assembly test room experiments. In these set of experiments, a smaller group of 6 female telephone operators was put under close observation and control. So frequent changes were made in their working conditions like hours of work, lunch break, rest period. So they varied all these. And again, the results were ambiguous as performance tended to increase even when the improvements in working conditions were withdrawn. It was found that socio-psychological factors exercised a greater influence on productivity and working condition. So, as Taylor said in his scientific approach, that you will provide everything at the shop floor, and the people would start working. So, they are not basically machines. What Hathorne found was that it is very much behavioral. The third was massed interview program. Now, what was the objective of this program? It was to make a systematic study of the employees' attitudes, which would reveal the meaning which their working situations has for them. So, the researchers interviewed a large number of workers with regard to their opinions on work, working condition, and supervision. A large number of workers were interviewed to judge their attitudes and opinions on the factor influencing productivity. The findings actually confirmed that the importance of social factors at work in the total work environment. So it was found that the opportunity to talk freely about things are more important to workers and had a positive effect on their morale and productivity. So interviews told that yes, they want to talk about the things freely, they want to interact better, and these socio psychological norms were actually more desirable than the workplace amenities. Then, bank wiring observation room study. Now, in this, a group of 14 workers was put under close supervision. The pay of every member was made dependent on the performance of the group as a whole. So, it was found that the informal group and its own norms of performance and various forms of social pressures were exercised to enforce these norms. As a result, output could not increase despite group incentive scheme. So their informal structures, they came into existence, and they actually did not lead to the productivity as suggested by Fayol and Taylor in the classical approach. So Hawthorne experiments conclusion. It said that work is a group activity and you have to take care of the formal and informal structures both. The social world of adult is primarily patterned about work activity. The need for recognition, security, sense of belonging is more important in determining workers' morale and productivity. So there are recognition needs, there are security needs, there is sense of belonging with people that has to be there. A complaint is not necessarily an objective. So if some person is complaining you, what is it seen as? A symptom manifesting disturbance of an individual's status position. So where he is standing, he is finding that he is being discriminated in certain manner, and hence there is this complaint. So the worker is a person whose attitudes and effectiveness are conditioned by social demands from both inside and outside the work area. So a worker is a person and lives in a social system, and he has social demands both from the workplace as well as outside the workplace, that is maybe his family time or something. So he has to balance both the things. Next is informal groups within the work area exercise strong social controls over the work habits and attitudes of individual workers. So these informal groups, if you guys make a group that okay, we would bunk a class, so it has got strong control over your habits and attitudes also. Whereas if you are individual, and so you would not be that daring to say that okay, no, today I'll not do the class. So it is only you who would be punished, but if there are 7 8 students also with you who will be punished, then you'll be fine, it's okay, let us all bear the brunt, right? Next is the change from an established society in the home to an adaptive society in the work area, resulting from the use of new techniques, tends to continually disrupt the social organization of work area. So a social organization of work area is like informal relationships. They actually keep on changing according to the new techniques or the new technology that comes in. So that is why people actually revolt uh, for accepting the new technology. They'll say, no, 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 why should we do it? If corona times were not there, then as a student, you wouldn't have liked this online studies. Or if I would have told you that you please submit your assignments online on the classroom rather than physically giving me, so you would have told me that no ma'am, it is better that you take this physical notes and check them and give it back. So new technologies always disrupt the social organization of the workplace as well as outside the workplace. Now, the group collaboration does not occur by accident. It must be planned and developed. If group collaboration is achieved, then the human relations within a work area may reach a cohesion which resists the disrupting effects of adaptive society. So, group collaborations, if you want the groups in your organization to work effectively, then it has to be carefully planned. So if I put two rivals in one group, then in the competition they might work high efficiently. But if I put two friends in one group, you will see invariably their efficiency would not be that much. So group collaboration has to be planned and developed accordingly, according to the people. Now, what were the limitations of Hawthorne experiments? So these experiments have been widely criticized by some behavioral scientists because of lack of scientific objectivity. So it was more of, one organization, few workers. So there was a limited exposure of this theory, and they arrived on the conclusions. So some critics feel that there was a bias and preconception on the part of Harvard researchers. So they preconceived something, and then they went to a factory. They put their principles there. People said yes, and they came up with the conclusions as a theory. So the next is that Hawthorne researchers did not give sufficient attention to the attitudes that people bring with them to the workplace. So I am a person, I'm an individual, I can have my own attitudes. So they did. So I come from a different class, maybe, or so I will have a different impact on other people. The same way, the role of unions, trade unions, a group will never work together uh, efficiently when if there are certain formation of trade unions. So all these things were overlooked by Hawthorne experiments. And the next is that the Hawthorne plant was not a typical plant because it was thoroughly unpleasant place to work. Therefore, the results could not be valid for others. So it was a kind of a plant which is generally not there in the other organizations, and every place has got its distinctive properties. So generalizing on the basis of one plant is actually not an advisable thing. And in research you have to be comprehensive. You have to take different plants, their experience, and then they would have come up with a collaborative theory. Next is the Hawthorne studies look upon the worker as means to ends and not an end in himself. So this is something like they are not being taken as an individual. Somehow somewhere they said that you cannot have personal goals. So either there are group goals, or they assume that acceptance of management's goal and look on the worker as someone to be manipulated by the management. So a management, by putting them in a deliberate group or by putting them individually, can manipulate them, which is not so, because a worker is a human being, has an identity of his own, have some attitudes or attributes of which are peculiar to the person. So after these criticisms, we have moved on to from Hawthorne to human relations movement. So, taking a clue from the Hawthorne experiment, several theorists conducted research in the field of interpersonal and social relations among the members of the organization. So, these relations are known as human relations. A series of studies by Maslow, McGregor, Herzberg, Keith Davis, Likert, and others led to what is known as human relation movement today. Human relation movement argued that workers respond primarily to the social context of the workplace, including social conditioning, group norms, and interpersonal dynamics. So they are saying that human relations are always in the social context. So there is an important part in human relation, and that is human being. What are his choices and attributes. The first is in this series is Maslow's need hierarchy theory. Now, according to Maslow, we have 5 categories of needs. So at the base of it, these are psychological needs. What are psychological needs? Like air, water. Physiological needs like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. All these are, it's a pyramid of 5 needs. On the base of it is physiological need related to the physical aspects. And then once these needs are met, so I get ample air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and clothing, then my safety needs arises. What are the safety needs? My personal security, employment, resources, and health. If I am safe in all these aspects, then I would go to the next level, and that is love and belonging. So once I am getting food and I am secure, then I look out for friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. So then comes this love. Once you have family, you have made friends, you have a good social structure, then arises the needs of esteem, self-esteem. Now comes my respect. How am I respected in my social circle? What is my status? How do people recognize me? What are the my strengths, and how much freedom do I have to express myself? So then these things come in play. And the last needs after fulfilling my physiological safety, love, and esteem needs comes the spiritual needs, self actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. So now I would be at the soul level, empathy. I would like to actualize myself. So all these are 5 needs of human beings. One after the other, they get fulfilled, and the highest is self actualization. Now, in this theory, higher needs in the hierarchy begin to emerge when people feel they have sufficiently satisfied the previous need. This I have elaborated adequately. Now, although later research does not fully support all of Maslow's theory, his research has impacted other psychologists and contributed to the field of positive psychology. Next comes the Keith Davis model of corporate social responsibility. So, the first thing he said was that social responsibility arises from social power. Now, this preposition is derived from the understanding that a business has significant amount of influence on and power over various critical issues like environment, minority employment, neighborhood development, etc. So it's a social responsibility. All businesses in the country primarily determines the various situations like employment, environment, and overall atmosphere that the citizens get to live in. Since business has power and influence over the society can and should hold the business responsible for social conditions that result from the exercise of the power. Next is Business shall operate as a two-way open system with open receipt of inputs from society and open disclosure of its operations to the public. What does that mean? It means that business must be willing to listen to what must be done to sustain or improve social welfare. In turn, the society must be willing to listen to the business reports on what is it doing to meet its social responsibility. And here Davis suggests that there must be ongoing, honest, and open communications between business and society's representatives if the overall welfare of society's representatives is to be maintained and improved. The next is the social costs and benefits of an activity, product, or service, and shall be thoroughly calculated and considered in deciding whether to proceed with it. Now, the technical feasibility and economic profitability and the short term and long term consequences of all business activities should be considered before undertaking them, because uh, organizations are actually economic entities, and if they would not be economically sound, then obviously the society tends to lose. So we have to look into the cost and benefit analysis of all the activities undertaken. Then next is the social costs related to each activity, product, or service shall be passed on to the customer. Now, if an organization is an economic entity, then obviously it cannot bear the price of, let's say, for example, providing greenery around your area. So what they can do is they can increase the product price and can provide you with the greener spaces. So actually this proposition states that business cannot be expected to completely finance activities that may be socially advantageous but economically disadvantageous. The cost of maintaining socially desirable activities within business should be passed on to the consumers through higher prices for the goods and services related to these activities. Otherwise, business will not sustain. And the last is business institutions as citizens have the responsibility to become involved in certain social problems that are outside their normal areas of operation. That is, if a business possesses the expertise to solve a social problem with which it may not be directly associated, it should be held responsible for helping society solve that problem. Since the business eventually will reap an increased profit from a generally improved society, business should share its responsibility of all citizenry to generally improve the society. So, business as an institution should also be showing effort of, improving the environment, atmosphere, so that he's a corporate citizen. You're a responsible citizen of the country. A corporate is also a group of responsible citizens, and it has to carry out that role well. So this was about the corporate social responsibility model of Keith Davis. Now, let's come to the critical evaluation of the human relations approach. So it said that it's very unscientific inquiry. Why it was unscientific in nature? Because it was telling something like Maslow's need hierarchy theory, or it takes a lot from the Hawthorne experiments also. So it was pretty unscientific. So there could be more people involved in the research. The base should have been more universe for its universal approach. So the sample size, I would say, was really small, and hence it is very unscientific. Anti-unions and pro-management bias. So because it did not take into consideration the trade unions, so it has got a management bias. The approach is criticized for ignoring the role of trade unions in a free society that we have discussed. The human relations approach is criticized for its failures to take into account the impact of larger economic and social technological factors on the productivity of the workers. Now it is telling about the behavioral, the human aspects of management, but it is not taking care of the technological, social factors and economic factors of the large organizations, where there are so many other things that are responsible for the productivity and existence of an organization. Now, in relations approach, too much emphasis is given to cooperation and coordination, while there is no place for conflicts. Now, why conflicts are important? Why competition is important? Critics feel that conflicts provide new life to the organization and open up the gateway for competition and progress. So, if there is a class where I would just teach and you do not ask me questions, your knowledge remains limited. But when you open your mind and you ask me questions, I also get the opportunity to tell you more, cite more examples, and hence the knowledge base increases. So that's the same way in a business meeting. If there are 2 3 point of views, everybody puts that on the table, a conflict arises, it's a healthy conflict, it can be resolved by giving reasoning. So it would lead to better decision making in an organization. Hence, conflicts are important. Next theory was organizational behavior theory. Now, several psychologists and sociologists began the study of group dynamics, that how the groups work, how they can be made effective. So, Chris Agaris, Kurt Lewin, Katzenkan, and other developed the field of organizational behavior. It involves the study of attitudes, behavior, and performance of individuals and groups in organizational settings. This approach came to known as behavioral approach. It is extended and improved version of human relations movement. So human relations was only related to the human being, his needs, how he should be doing it, whereas this organization behavior, it is multidimensional and interdisciplinary, the application of knowledge drawn from behavioral sciences. So what all it draws from: psychology, sociology, anthropology, to the management problems. Therefore it is called behavioral science approach. So that unscientificness of the human relations was actually made scientific in the behavioral science approach. Now, overall appraisal of neoclassical approach. It is a beautiful approach actually. It consists of so many theories. What all it did was it has generated awareness of the overwhelming role of human factor in industry. This approach has given new ideas and techniques for better understanding of human behavior. Then the contributors to this approach recognize an organization is a social system subject to the sentiments and cultural patterns of the members of the organization. Group dynamics, leadership, motivation, participation, job environments, etc., constitute the core of neoclassical theory. This approach changed the view that employees are tools, which was considered in the classical approach, and furthered the belief that employees are valuable resources. We can keep them motivated, we can guide them through good leadership, we can make them participative. So it all laid the foundation for later development in the management theory. What are the limitations? The first, it lacks the precision of classical theory. Classical theory was very scientific in nature. And why it cannot be precise? Because human behavior is unpredictable. The second is that it concludes that its conclusions lack scientific validity and suffer from clinical bias. So they were, like I've told you, so because of the interviewing few people, you cannot come out with a theory. And lastly, its application in practice is very difficult because it requires fundamental changes in the thinking and attitude of both management and workers. So what works the best in a management scenario? Carrot and stick approach, that you give object incentives and you get the work done. this is something like a machine. You will put more, you will get more. uh, it actually requires sea change in the thinking of the management, that yes, these are human beings, I have to treat them well. What most will you do is you would put good basic amenities, drinkable water, good canteens, or hygienic work conditions. You can give that, but recognizing their relationships among themselves, it becomes very complex also. And given the human behavior which is unpredictable, then entire time would go into dealing with the relations rather than being productive or giving the output that is required, and hence it is challenging to apply it. Now, what is the difference between classical and neoclassical theories? So, the first point is focus. Classical approach focuses on functions and economic demand, whereas neoclassical approach focuses on emotion and human qualities of workers. The second is structure. So, the structure classical approach has a machinistic and impersonal structure, very formal. But neoclassical recognizes the social systems. What about the application? It is more of an autocratic management. Strict rules are there, but neoclassical they call for democratic progress. Then emphasize. So all the emphasis in classical approach is on discipline, rationality, whereas neoclassical about the personal demands, personal security, what are the social needs, all these are taken care in neoclassical. Work goal of worker. What is the work goal? Maximum remuneration and reward. But in case of classical, they recognize that attainment of organizational goals is important as well as the personal goals. Concept about men. So workers, they are economic beings. They are economic machines. They will earn money. Whereas in case of neoclassical, the workers are recognized as a social being. The content was, as we know, scientific management, administrative management, and bureaucratic management. Neoclassical as Hathorne, human relation and organizational behavior. What is the relation in this? Formal relations in classical and informal relations in neoclassical. Machinistic nature of classical approach and organistic or socialistic nature of neoclassical approach. So, with this, we are done with our classical and neoclassical approaches. And what is the conclusion? Classical and neoclassical approaches made a crucial role in the advancement of management theories and practices. The adopted management approaches are important due to the facts that determine the efficiency and congenial environment with which managerial activities are performed. Now, in this era of rapid economic development and industrial expansion of different nations, classical and neoclassical theorists made an undeniable role by developing different techniques of production. And it enabled every nation to be involved in this global market. So, this is the rationale of classical and neoclassical approach in today's era. Though classical theory is now treated to be outdated, but it is important because it introduced the concept of management as a subject for intellectual analysis and provided a basis of ideas. So, whenever you start from somewhere. Hence, classical theory is relevant because it provided the basis of ideas that have been developed by subsequent schools of management thought. So, as our civilization is developing, the rules are becoming outdated, but somewhere we had to start, right? So if you now know fluently how to speak English, doesn't mean that you will forget the basic alphabets. Neoclassical approach put overemphasis on human variables and symbolic rewards which may not be appreciated by the recipients. It serves as the backbone to many current management theories. This development holds a rather brighter future for the study, research, and practice of management. Because neoclassical approach emphasizes on human variables and the symbolic rewards, so still it is backbone of so many current management theories. and hence it has got much more relevance than the classical approach. So this was all our discussion about classical and neoclassical approach. In the next session, we would be coming up with the modern management theory. These are the related references. Thank you so much for attending this session.